Teresa Weekly, here enjoying the nice warm weather. It has been so nice out. Sharon and I are enjoying it while it lasts, because we know it won't be forever. Hasn't been very productive. That's okay, right? Yeah. So one thing I thought about losing my sister Tara to a year ago, how long it takes to get to the point where things feel normal, like how long does it take to where you don't feel the pain in the same way and you just start to feel like things are normal. And I don't know that it will ever happen, but I did talk to another family who experienced a similar loss 12 years ago, so they're farther along on this, to see how this journey has been for them. And this is my conversation with the Eardley family. I have Mary and Jeff and Mark with me today, and you lost a loved one a while ago, and as I understand it, you're all kind of in a different place with the healing process, and that's what I want to talk about, because I know for me I've kind of wondered, like, how long is this going to take where I feel okay after losing my sister? What can I expect? And I think what I've come to see is, well, it just depends on who you are and what you encounter along the way. So I just kind of want to talk about who you lost and where you are. And Mary, as the matriarch of the family, why don't we start with you? Can you tell me a little bit?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so I lost my youngest son, Matthew, their brother. It'll be 12 years in July 11th, 2009, and to suicide. And basically, he, grew up happy kid, had everything you'd think, nice home, brothers, families loved them. At 19 years old, he came to me and basically said that he had these feelings in his head and he didn't really know what they were or why it was happening, and he just felt anxious and sad. And, we would talk about it, but the biggest thing for him was the stigma with it, and he didn't want to get the help that he needed. And I tried to encourage him that we do have mental health or mental illness in our families, so I'm familiar with that, but he wouldn't get the help. And he kept saying, I can do this on my own, until he couldn't. And we knew that he was in the throes of depression, but we didn't know it was to the depth that it was. And so we 2009. So it's been 12 years.
Who's older, Jeff or Mark?
Jeff. Yeah,
okay.
The oldest.
So, as the oldest brother, how did that all play out from your perspective? What do you remember about that time?
Yeah, I can remember actually even before it happened. It was about probably 8 to 10 months before it happened, and I remember my mom calling me and I was on a trip. I remember I was traveling, and she was very concerned about how he was doing. He wasn't getting the help that he should. And I remember sitting down with him. We actually went out to lunch and sat down and talked. And it's a tough conversation to have, right? It's a tough topic to bring up. And I remember thinking, why don't I have this disease? And the sky's blue, and it's a nice day, and we have all the nice things that my mom talked about earlier, and it just doesn't work like that. If you're not in those person's or people's shoes, it's hard to really wrap your hands around and truly understand. And so, there was that, and followed up with them, and a couple different times. And I remember leading the week before was 4th of July, and we always did a family outing with some close family friends on the 4th of July. And I remember he was actually putting away the dishes in the dishwasher. He was at my parents' house, and I don't know why I was necessarily over there, but I just said, hey man, really want you to be at the 4th of July, and hope to see you there. Yeah, I'll be there. And he didn't. And I remember just thinking, what's going on with him, and just trying to ask yourself all these questions, and again, as she said, nowhere close to where we were worried something like this would take place. And so fast forward a week, and I will vividly remember that day, obviously, for the rest of my life, where got the phone call from my mom, and I was in my basement. I just got done working out, got the phone call, and I could barely make out what she was saying. She was like, "You just need to get here quick. Matt did something," and so rushed over to the house, and obviously my worst nightmare came true, and I mean, a lot of things I remember about that day, but that's kind of leading up to it. You would have never thought, just the way Matt was, just very selfless person, very happy, in front of the doors, right? Behind closed doors was always a different story, but just didn't seem like that would ever take place with him. And so, it's a tough thing to deal with, for sure.
When you learned about what happened, Mark, how did you react in the days and the years that followed?
Yeah. Well, so the day of, I was actually in Toronto for a friend's bachelor party. And so, speaking of Jeff's vivid pictures, I remember the phone call coming through and almost not answering it because I think we were in the middle of a bachelor party. But I did, and at that point it was pretty difficult because Jeff didn't know if he had passed or not, other than Jeff was just as hysterical, saying you need to get home, you need to get to mom and dad's, and I'm like, I can't, I'm in Toronto, what's going on? And so then we hung up, and it felt like an eternity. I walked around downtown Toronto, and thankfully I had very good friends with me that were supportive of it, but I'm like, I have no idea what's happening. I'm waiting to hear back from Jeff, and it seemed like it was hours, but it was probably 15 minutes that he called me back and told me it passed. And I think from that point it was just like, you got to figure out how to get home, so you got to try to come to grips with reality and everything else, but then at the same time just try to understand what actually happened. And for me, so we were closer in age, we're only 3 years apart. We were, I would say, best friends. I mean, I shared a lot with him, but we never really got into those conversations. We never really talked about his depression or anything like that. And I don't know, I was young too, so I feel like maybe I didn't want to have those conversations with him. So we just never really approached it. And so I think shortly afterwards, it took me quite a while to really forgive myself. It was just a lot of questions of, why didn't I talk to him more? We're closer than this. Why didn't we have these conversations? And so I feel like I kind of beat myself up a lot for quite a while about it. I was also super angry with him, right out of the gate, feeling like this is a selfish thing, and just things nobody's educated for this. Nobody thinks this is going to happen, So I feel like that was all part of the process, was learning the different emotions to go through. And it just feels like we're still on the journey, but it just changes, throughout from that point to now.
I understand that asking why didn't I see this? Why didn't I ask about this? And I should have known. As his mom, how was that guilt for you, Mary?
It was not right away. I was more thinking about conversations later. I think I tried to talk to him. I tried to explain to him this is like any other illness. You just need to get help. But yeah, that guilt is there. And you think maybe if I would have done this, or if we would have done this. I mean, I thought of things. Even it was like he always wanted a puppy, and I thought maybe if we just got him a puppy. Just things like that. You're grasping at things, and I think the thing that I struggled with for the longest time was he actually did say to me one day, and I didn't share this with people for a long, long time because it was so hard, was that he said, "Mom, I just want to die." And I said, "Oh, honey, you don't mean that. Yeah, not now, and that, I just thought I didn't think it was a phase. I knew it was real. I knew depression was real. I knew it was chemical. I knew all that, from family experiences. But I just thought, I just always have hope for everything, you know, and everything in my life, and I just thought he's going to get the help, he's going to be okay. And I just thought, honey, you don't mean that. And we still talked about it. It wasn't like I tried to, what I've told so many people since then, and I learned this, you know, through Christy and through the Mental Health Foundation, is, you know, if you talk about suicide, you're afraid to talk about it because you're afraid they might be thinking of it, or you might be encouraging it. And I've learned from this experience, and I've shared this with a lot of parents, is if you think that they're thinking about it, then talk to them about it, because then at least they know they can come to you, and that might be even a burden that they can kind of unleash, and you know, just be able to feel like they can, you know, that somebody understands. And so for me, that was probably the toughest. But yeah, there's always the what ifs, and why didn't I do this, and if I would have just maybe encouraged them a little bit more, or, you know, had someone else talk to them. That was the other thing. We didn't share it with a lot of people. There's a lot of people that didn't know, I mean, close family, but my mother and father and his grandson and grandma didn't know. You know, so that put a lot of guilt on them. Like, well, we could have done this, and everybody thought, well, I could have done this, and you know, that's partially a lot why we are sharing our story, because we want other people to not have to go through that and feel like it's not a normal conversation to have, but it's an important conversation to have with your loved one.
Where do you feel that you all are on this journey? Do you feel like, I can't imagine you all just stayed level at the same place at the same time, but at this point, 12 years later, do you feel that you're all in a similar place, or are you still in different places?
I think, you know, I let them answer. You know, from my perspective, it's a roller coaster, right? And it's, you know, a day doesn't go by where you don't think about him or think about the situation or the, you know, the what ifs. And someone said to me after it happened that, you know, an idle mind is the devil's playground. So it's one of those things you think about it, and you have to realize that it happened. But there's still times, you know, where, and this was obviously much closer to when it happened, and, you know, we have young families now that I think, you know, takes your mind off it to an extent. But you know, I would think like, well, he's on a long vacation, he's going to walk through the door someday, or he's going to, you know, be there when I least expect it. And you got to come to realization that that's not the case, and, you know, it's the new normal, and everybody deals with the new normal in a completely different way. And I've mentored people through conversations like this before, where it's like, you know, nobody can tell you how to grieve or how you're going to react day to day, and you just got to, you know, take the highs with the highs and the lows with the lows, and, you know, try not to get out of balance too much, but, you know, lean on your family and your friends and your faith, or whatever you need to do to kind of get you through that situation, because there's no, you know, one size fits all for everybody, because everybody deals with it in a different way. So for me, you know, now I feel like I'm okay. You know, I mean, really, when it first happened, I think, you know, I really focused more, and I think Mark the same thing, focused on my mom and our parents, and probably didn't talk about it as much as we should, or have, but we've gotten through it. And I think, you know, she did a fantastic job of, and it worried me at times, you know, talking to other people and making sure that other people get help, as she alluded to. But there was a lot of times where I felt like she would do that, and it would kind of rip off, you know, the proverbial bandaid again, right? And so I think for the longest time it was more just making sure that she was okay. And, you know, now it's something where it's part of the reason why I decided to join the Mental Health Foundation, is I feel like I should be doing more, I could be doing more. So this is kind of part, you know, it took 11, 12 years to kind of get to that point, but it's something that I think I could do a better job of, and I want to help my community. And like she said, you know, and we actually said that when we were here at Millennium Park, when I got interviewed by out of the Darkness Walk. I got interviewed by somebody, I think it was from Woods 88, and, you know, I didn't even know what I was saying at the time, because we were still going through a lot of different emotions. But I was like, listen, if me being here and all these people being here make sure that this doesn't happen to one more family or one more friend, then, you know, that's our part, right? So it's a tough one. you know?
I feel like it took you all these years to really be able to open up and talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could talk about it, and I could talk about it with people. And I remember somebody saying to me when it first happened, and I was definitely not happy with the comment, but I have, grown up a little bit and understood it more. And someone said, this is going to make you a better family member or a better friend or a better listener or a better parent. And at the time, it was just too new for that comment probably to be made. And you'll hear it, and other people have heard it, that people want to relate to your situation. So they just feel like they have to fill that awkwardness with their story. And it's just like, listen, my situation isn't any more important than your situation. Your situation is yours and mine is mine. And I appreciate you giving me the feedback. But, people at the end of the day, I think, are trying to do their best and trying to be there for you. But sometimes, they just don't know how to have that conversation.
You don't want to hear why you're better off,
totally,
because you know that you're not.
Especially days after this took place, right? It's just too fresh and too new. But I look back at that now and I go, you know what? There was some truth to it. Like, there was definitely some truth to it. And yeah, I would give back all those things to have my brother here. But you have to move forward, and you have to, have some positive come from it. And so, it's an ebb and a flow, though. I mean, you can go right back kind of into the negative really quick. So it's not easy.
Was there ever anything that helped you feel like you had more closure or helped you move forward?
So yeah, that's a really good question. I feel like it was interesting because I wasn't like super close with his friends. I knew a lot of his friends, and the way that everyone came together during that time, specifically his friends, was just huge. And I feel like I got really close with a lot of them, and I felt like it was almost like I could, I don't know, connect with them was like connecting with him. And it was, I don't know if I want to say closure, but it's just a really good way to process it all and hear stories from them, and maybe things that I'm like, I should have been asking, I should have been talking about. But I got the stories from them, and then you just hear like the most wonderful things about him, and you're like, okay, like, he was awesome. And so I feel like that was where I went for that. Kind of to your point before with where we were at in the process. The other thing I did, opposite of Jeff, was I feel like I kind of like went gung-ho, like, I'm going to support my mom, I'm going to get this message out, I'm going to do all these things. And in fact, I think I had a disagreement with Christy about a way a message was being portrayed, which we had a great conversation about. And so I went like hardcore into it, of really trying to tackle this issue and talk about it. And I'm still that way. Like, so if you were to say where you at in this process, I'm still through that process, or I'm still in that process of trying to get word out, stop the stigma, make sure people are talking about it. But now I'm in a different spot because I have 3 kids. And so that's changed the whole mindset for me of like, how do I say this to them and talk about their uncle, And so I feel like just recently, I feel like it's going to get a lot harder because I have to explain this to these kids, but I feel like I'm ready for it. So that's where I kind of feel I'm in that process. All these years have prepared me for this, even though I know it's going to be super difficult, but that's therapeutic for me, is to be able to talk about it. I have no problem. I'm not scared to talk about it or anything. And that's super therapeutic for me to be able to tell my story and talk about it.
Have you talked to your kids?
Yeah. I mean, so my oldest is only 5, and I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. And so the conversations right now are just about Uncle Matt and who he was, and he's in heaven. And they ask a lot of questions, and it's hard, but they love him, and it's so funny because they never met him, and it's like amazing to hear them. And in fact, my wife didn't actually ever meet him either. I met her shortly after he died. And so it's just interesting. I have a whole family that never met him, and I got to explain who Uncle Matt was. And so, but again, that's therapeutic. Like, I'm crying right now about it, but it's like it's just great to not forget him. I think that was our biggest thing, was don't ever forget him. We were scared that was going to happen. And 12 years later, we still haven't, and I don't ever see that happening, So, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't think there's ever really closure, right? Because there's the holidays, and then the day that it happens, it's always the week leading up to that. Again, the what ifs come out. So I don't know if there's ever really, closure per se. I think there is the process, and you're constantly through it, and it's the ebb and flow. And if you can help people through that and make sure that doesn't happen to one more person, which she's done a fantastic job of being there for a lot of different people she doesn't even know, then you get through the process, hopefully better or easier. I don't know what the right word is, but I don't know if there's
you keep moving through it.
Yeah, exactly.
He mentioned initially, with you talking about it so much, he felt like it was ripping off a bandaid. Did you feel that as well?
I did. I felt like I had to do that. I felt like if I kind of like Mark said too, and both Jeff now where he is in the stage of wanting to give back and help, and for me it was like right off the bat, right off the get-go, I thought I got to do something. I have to do something, and I think that helped me in my healing. And like Jeff said, there's really never closure, and I don't think you ever really heal. Someone always said, time heals all wounds, and I don't think it heals wounds, especially in this situation. But so for me, it was. But yeah, it would rip it off every time, but I felt like I got more satisfaction out of that, knowing I was helping people. Sometimes you have to sacrifice your own comfort and your own, to be able to help other people. And I knew that that's what Matt would want, and it was almost just like a calling. It wasn't even like obviously I didn't ask for it, but I mean it was like a calling. Like I had to do it. So I went to schools, and I talked to college groups and parents groups and school groups, and then just shared my story on different venues, and honestly I'm kind of in a different place now. I mean, I still like this, and people call me and they ask if I talk to their child or different things, and but I kind of have backed off a little bit, but I do want to get back into it. But I do think too my grandchildren have brought that joy that I never thought I'd ever have, and to you I think too it's like that, it's that like Jeff ebb and flow and the roller coaster. To me, I kind of liken it like being out in a boat. I've read this analogy before, but you're out in a boat and the waves are just hitting you in the beginning. They're just hitting you and they're hitting you and hitting you, and you just think you're never, and then you just get knocked over and you can't come up, and you finally come up for air, and then you get knocked back down again. But then eventually they get a little bit calmer, and eventually there's clouds, and then eventually the clouds give way to the sun, and there is joy again. And I want you to know that there is joy again, but then it can happen again. Then you get, for me, it's a lot of times I can be in a room with all my grandkids and my kids, and it's the happiest time, but my heart sometimes just hurts because I'm like, we should be here. Right. So those are the things but it's still, there's still joy. There's still joy, and it can take some time to get to that point, but what you're doing I think is amazing. I mean, right off the get-go.
Well, I feel like you do a little bit with the Band-Aid, but
Yeah.
I'm sure you do, and you said that in the beginning. It kind of, people want to talk, and it gets to be too much sometimes, and you have to know when to back away.
When you talk, what message do you try to leave everyone with?
What my message is I have a presentation. First I started out pretty raw with just a big old picture of Matt, and then Mark kind of helped me with the presentation, and I'm not a speaker, and I'm not really even comfortable with it, but I more try to put a face on mental illness, and so I start out the presentation with like people that are famous with what they all have in common, and then I say I'm going to show you another face, and this face isn't as famous, and I show that face, and then just talk about mental illness, and that it's affects one in everyone in the room, affected by it in some way, shape, or form, and then I just share him and his life and what he was, and to us, and who he was as a person, and then I share his sickness and when he got sick, and what we went through, and so because I just really want to put a face on it and let people know, especially the stigma. A lot of letters afterwards from young people just saying, so afraid to tell somebody. And, so that's basically is my message, is putting a face on the mental illness, and trying to end the stigma around it, and trying, and especially for asking for help, and especially for young men. It's such a hard thing. Being a tough guy. Being a tough guy, and he was. I mean, he was athletic. He was had a lot of friends, and he was always the guy that was trying to help everybody out. So I think those are the type, don't want to ask for help.
Yeah, very susceptible to it. And that's something that I, think about a lot, especially with the pandemic and the situation that we're in. And I message it with my team now, where it's like, listen, just check in with people, just make sure they're okay. You never know what somebody's going through, or, what happened to them that day, or, just all the different factors with this pandemic, and not having the human interaction that we all, kind of strive to have, not having it as often, and it's different. I'm like, listen, if you're late for a meeting because you asked somebody if they're okay or how their day was going, like, you're not going to no one's going to get in trouble for that. Like, we need to be checking in with each other, make sure we're okay. And, because nobody's too busy, to just, try to deter something like, something from like this from happening. And it can be as easy as, I heard on your podcast where that gentleman, I can't remember. Yeah, just talked about, that they've talked to survivors, and, they were going to commit this act, and they had a smile. They received a smile that day from somebody, and that turned their day around. I mean, it's the simple things that a lot of us overlook and you kind of take for granted, and you got to remember that stuff. And everybody's human beings, and we need to treat each other like that.
It's hard to measure prevention, right?
It is, and it's different for everybody. Everybody's journey. And I think for some, it's it's so easy. We'll just get help, just talk to somebody, and it's not that easy for some people.
Even once you make the decision to, then it's still not that easy. Yeah.
Right.
It's a lot of work, and sometimes, I've said to people, sometimes, the outcome isn't what you want, just like any other illness. Sometimes people are going to die, and that's not a real hopeful message, but at least if you can get people to look at this like any other illness and seek the treatment that they need, and just, be able to have that conversation.
In closing here, as far as the journey goes, for you guys are all in the same family, but I'm sure you've all processed it differently. Mark, what would you want people to know about having patience and understanding when other friends and family are at a different place than you? Because it sounds like you kind of jumped right in, but Jeff wasn't necessarily there. So I don't know if that, I don't want to say caused problems, but you guys were on different pages. So how did you handle that? What would you want people to understand as they're going through it newly?
I think that you just can't be ashamed of whatever journey you're going to be on. Like, you don't know. I didn't know what journey I was going to be on, and you just understanding that everybody's on a different page and going through a different scenario and different stage of it all, and just patience. And I think for me, it was like, try to gain some knowledge. Like, it would be important to have the conversation rather than get upset or be like, why isn't he on the same page as me? Why aren't we having the same feelings or whatever? Like, let's talk about that. Like, why are you there? Let's figure this out. Okay, well, I was there too, and we could share some insight on it and just gain knowledge from each other and build from there. I think my mom always said, we're going to become better and not bitter, and that's just who we are as a family. So, like, I can't be bitter with them at all. They didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. Like, it just was, I would say patience and understanding and an open mind to listen to each other and talk it out.
Better, not bitter. That's nice. I like that. Thank you guys for coming out on such a beautiful day in March. I've enjoyed meeting you, and I appreciate your time.
Hopefully we'll have conversations again. And
that will be great.
Take an upstream approach to mental health with the Be Nice Action Plan. Invite yourself to reach out. Have a caring conversation about the changes you've noticed. I've noticed this, and I'm concerned about you. Is everything okay? You haven't seemed like yourself lately, and I noticed something you posted online that really made me worry. Can we talk about it? I noticed you stopped going to the gym, which you typically love to do. Have you been feeling okay lately? Learn more about each step of the Be Nice Action Plan at benice.org.